pushing open official contact. And I think the only reason that hasn't happened is, well, from their own words, they've said it's because of our warlike ways and our prejudices against each other. But also because we still have a cover-up situation, an active cover-up, which is still, in place. Yes, there are lots of whistleblowers. Yes, there's a strong movement towards disclosure. The cat's out of the bag. We all know the government's hiding stuff, but we're still not there where we need to be, where this is, a mainstream subject that is treated seriously in the way it should be. I mean, to me, this is an extremely serious subject. If we were to say, release the technology of the UFOs that we have already, it would solve the environmental crisis, the economic crisis, and the energy crisis, or at least, help us. And just that alone, not to mention the healing technology that we've received from UFOs. So we have got to push this disclosure agenda, I think, and this is where we're going to see a whole lot of change upcoming. And once it sort of breaks a little bit more wide open, I do think we're going to have open official contact. I think it's coming. I really do, and that's going to be a real shock for a lot of people.
Well, I think what's going to happen is, the government has lied so long. Look what happened at Roswell. They first announced that they, got a crash UFO, and then all of a sudden it's a weather balloon. And, and I've seen pictures of where it crashed. No weather balloon could have done what it did. But, they look at, as American public or world public, okay, depending on where you're at, as naive idiots. I hate to say it, but one of these days something's going to happen and they're not going to be able to, cover it up. And that's what I'm hoping for, is one of these days something is going to happen where they can't sit there and say, well, it doesn't exist. I can see the point. Like when you're a little kid and you lie, like your mom says, hey, did you take that money out of my purse? And you say, no, I didn't do it. Well, your mom knows you took it. I mean, it's going to be to a point one day that the government just can't lie anymore.
Yeah, I think the people who are, covering this up, they've painted themselves into a corner. There's a little bit of, arrogance and entitlement to them. I think they do feel a bit superior to, us poor schleps who are out here trying to survive. But I think you're absolutely right in terms of an event occurring that will not be able to be covered up, because that's the pattern that we've seen, starting with, these numerous kind of waves. Really, the 1947 wave was the first big modern super wave. But following that, they've come pretty regularly. And more recently, we've had stuff like, the Hudson Valley wave, certainly, and Gulf Breeze. And up in Belgium, there was that huge wave. Stevensville, Texas, we had that UFO hovering right over O'Hare Airport. This is the kind of behavior I think UFO investigators call displays. It's sort of a publicity campaign, seriously. And our last real big one that we've had here in the U.S. at least was Stevensville. That was a good, 5 years ago? And so we're overdue. These come pretty regularly, and I'm expecting a real big one, like Phoenix Lights. And now there's enough cell phones out there. I think we've got enough global awareness. We've got a real internet, that's a live wire in terms of communication, getting information across the world instantly, that we could get some real undeniable proof, which basically has already happened, like in Mexico City during the eclipse of 91?
Yeah.
Remember that? There was this metallic saucer flying right over the city. It was videotaped by 20 different people in different locations. It's pretty much undeniable. It's among the best proof we have out there in the public arena, at least.
Well, they try to debunk that one, too, because what they try to say is that basically somebody set big balloons off, with a light on it, and they even tried showing how it could be done and mimicked and all that stuff. But you know what? I mean, it can't keep going on this way. But I do have one thought in my mind. I do think that there's aliens out there, species, that are probably trying to help us one way or another, but I still think that there is maybe the opposite. And the reason why I say that is when I was a kid, Preston, my father was a good friend of a major movie star, which would come up to our house up in Seattle every summer to visit my dad. My dad served with him in the Korea time frame, and that was James Gardner. And I got to know. When I was young, I didn't know who he was. When I got older, I realized, hey, this is the guy that does Rockford and all these TV shows, Maverick and stuff. And we were talking. I said, I really would love to talk to Ronald Reagan. And he goes, well, he's a good friend of mine. And back at that time frame, I can't remember how old I was. I was a teenager. Reagan had a show where you could call up once a month and talk to the president for young people. Well, instead of me calling, I got a phone call from the White House that Reagan wanted to talk to me. And, we talked a little bit on the air, and that was it, I thought. About a week later, I get another call because my friend said, I really, if you could talk to this kid, he really wants to talk to you. I talked to Reagan, and one thing I asked him about Star Wars, and one thing at that age, it didn't sit into my brain till I got older. I said, well, is that to keep, the nukes from Russia, the Soviet Union from, if we got attacked. And he kind of like went quiet for a while, and he says, no, it's for out there.
Whew.
And that, it didn't really sink in. Till I got older and started doing talk shows. And then I remembered, what he said. So like sometimes I just kind of wonder, because of the mutilations with animals and humans and all kinds of stuff, we could be, let's face it, we're not the only people walking on a planet. So, I do feel that there is aliens out there that want to help us. Or maybe not even want to help us. They just don't want to see us destroy us or us destroy ourselves, because it maybe can affect them too. But then I got a funny feeling there might not be the friendly, happy campers that some people say that give off orbs and they're loving towards humans.
Right. Well, the truth is we don't know. And we are in a situation where we're having a lot of problems. So if someone's out there who can help us, they're not doing it in a way that's like, completely transforming our society. I'm sure they're what I see, in terms of the actual cases and what people are experiencing, is a fairly regular bell curve. There are people who are treated basically like a lab rat, is how they feel. They don't feel that the ETs care about their feelings. They feel as if, they're arrogant and look down upon them, is how one lady told me. She was actually healed. She had a healing experience by these ETs and still wasn't particularly happy with them. And on the other end, you do get cases where people are able to have long conversations and feel absolutely comfortable and are given tours of the engine room and healed and, taken to other planets in some cases, fully on positive. Most are not on either end of that spectrum. Most are sort of in the middle, where they're taken and they're treated, not badly, not well. The ETs don't converse a whole lot. Often the conversation is limited to, don't be afraid, we're not here to hurt you, you won't remember this, come with us, this sort of thing. And often they're very coy in their answers, not wanting to give information.
But,
so that's what I see as kind of, a bell curve with. On the far end, though, you don't have like Nazi torture and sadism and all sorts of awful things, murder and so on, that humans do. Very, 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 very rarely do you ever come across anything like that. So much easier, I think, to prove humans is as bad than ETs. But
I would
be naive about it.
I would think so, that you're right. I have seen some pictures of people being mutilated from so-called aliens. That was alarming. They look the same way as the cattle, as being mutilated.
Yeah.
And
horrifying.
Yeah. Well, we don't know. The thing is, it's strange things. Like I had a trucker. It's been on my show, and he's actually coming back, I think, next week, or no, end of the month. That he was going through Texas, going through a desert or a small desert area. And he just happened to look out his cab side window, and he saw a cow going up in air. And the first thing he did is he looked and he didn't see no helicopter. He didn't see any ropes or chains, but he saw this cow just kind of going up. And that makes you wonder if that cow was going to be experimented on. But, I don't know. Maybe they're collecting DNA and that's how they're doing it. I don't know. But, I don't want to be abducted in any form without my permission. But I can certainly see that look what we do. Don't we tag animals and don't we do whatever we do with animals ourselves?
Yeah, heck, we're eating them. I mean,
yeah.
So I think we do have a pretty good handle on the ET agenda. I really do. When someone's taken on board the very most common thing, and this is according to several studies, certainly the first one was Thomas Bullard, who studied some 300, I believe it was 270 abduction cases, is a physical examination. That's what the ETs seem most interested in, particularly Greys, but pretty much all of them. And they probably know more about the human body, I'd say, than we do. They seem to be very interested in genetic material and this hybridization program, certainly. I got cases of that right in the beginning in 1988 when I first started getting into this field. So that's something we know they're doing, but we know they're taking our precious metals. There's all kinds of cases over mines. I did a study of that. They're absolutely keeping a very close eye on our ventures into space. Starting back in 1947 and onward, White Sands was launching missiles, and the UFOs were all over that. They're all over Edwards Air Force Base, China Lake. There's all kinds of rocket launches where these things show up from the beginning to the present day. I mean, there's a recent Chinese rocket launch, another recent Russian launch, where both had UFOs coming up to them. And in many of these cases, they actually do affect the missiles. So that's another agenda they have. Absolutely, they're warning people. This is the most common message given, as I mentioned earlier, warnings of nuclear proliferation or overpopulation, pollution, and so on. Second to that would be being taken to the engine room and shown how the UFO works and basically being told to go off fossil fuels and that there's different sources of energy. So alternative energy is a huge theme that they discuss. And thirdly, they're very interested in educating people about spirituality, I would say, or hands-on healing. And the reason I say that is because it's very common. I get it with God. Half the cases of the people I've talked to, they come away from their experience doing Reiki or hands-on healing, or they want to do water dowsing, or they're channeling now, or they're giving psychic readings. Many come away as vegetarians. They're become very pronounced environmentalists and human rights activists and this sort of thing. So these are various things that we can prove that this is the ET agenda, because it's not talk. This is what they're actually doing. So I think we've got some handle on it. I don't think they're here to take over our planet. We don't see a whole lot of evidence of that. They kind of already have, in my mind. And our relationship with ETs is far closer and far more complicated, I think, than even people within the UFO community realize. Because for Pete's sake, they look just like us. Exactly, the human-looking ones. Which means that they've obviously, infiltrated our society, probably at all levels. I think there's evidence of that as well. And in fact, the Greys are interbreeding with us and have said flat out, we are you, you are us, one day you will look like us, this sort of thing.
Now, that kind of reminds me of that movie, was it The Body Snatchers?
Yeah, I mean, it's a wild situation. People are talking, well, ETs are going to invade our planet. Well, who's to say we aren't the ETs? Did we even evolve here? Are ETs incarnating through us? And by that I mean, past lives, this sort of thing. A lot of, maybe not a lot, but certainly a good portion of people who've been taken on board are told by the ETs, you were us in the past, or you are part of our group, you are one of us, you had a past life with us, variations of that. So yes, something is going on in terms of their relationship to us, with us.
I think so, because, I really feel that we've been rebooted. And I think the way if you go by how man originally started, okay, all the way up, it doesn't make logical sense. But, I'm going on by a couple of things. Lately, well, I would say in the last couple of years, the Finks. And I mentioned this a lot of times in my show, the wear mark.